Hello, I'm Unzube Ufodike and welcome back to Storiez, where we center and celebrate diverse, positive voices from and around the continent. Storiez shines a spotlight on individuals and initiatives that are championing diversity in their own unique way while slaying in the lane. Tonight's episode is all about ballroom, and here with us tonight is international father Darrell West. He's well known in the ballroom scene, both internationally and in the UK. Now as a father and a mentor to so many across the world, he also works as a coordinator therapist for ethnic minorities in the LGBTQ+ community, and has worked as a choreographer and dancer for artists such as Chris Brown, Madonna, Michael Jackson, and several others. I mean, welcome to the show, Darrell.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. It's like, I'm loving the energy, I'm loving the bling, the outfit. It's giving me life.
It's just something casual, you know? Just something casual.
Love it. So we're talking about ballroom, and I thought no better person to introduce that to our audience. So when you hear ballroom, what comes to mind? What would you like to teach the children?
What would I...
Where do you start? There's so much.
There is so much. But I know that I think one of the biggest misconceptions, a lot of people say that ballroom started in the 80s.
Yeah.
Voguing started in the 70s and the 80s. Ballroom is the community and which voguing is birthed from. But ballroom has been around since the 1920s.
Wow, I didn't know that.
So that's like something that I usually like to let people know. I believe it's called Spectacles of Colour.
Yes.
It's written by Langston Hughes, and he talks about going to his first ball in 1924. So
amazing. There's a lot of history there. So back in the 20s, the original ball culture existed. And how has that changed over time to what it is?
I mean,
today?
back then there wasn't any dance categories. It was more about pageantry, and there was a few like lip syncing and drag performances. And then as time evolved, then we started adding things like face and dancing and voguing and
yes,
which also didn't come from Madonna. Just putting it out there. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be forever evolving.
Yes, yeah. And today, the UK scene, I mean, I went to a pre-corona ball, and it was everything. So can you talk a little bit about what the UK ballroom scene is, and perhaps introduce your legendary House of West to the audience?
So the UK ballroom scene, I believe it started... Well, I started in ballroom late 2004, 2005
so when you were only 15.
I mean, if that's the story we're going to go with, who am I to decline? But yes, I started around that time. So there was no Facebook. I'm talking about when there was like High Five, AOL, Face Pick, Face Party.
I do remember those.
MySpace.
Yes, giving away my age now, but yeah.
Oh, you remember?
I do remember.
Okay.
Well, someone told me those things existed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I started around then. And then I took a little break because I was just like, there's me and only one other person that's doing this. And everyone was treating us like we was crazy. And it was hard to try and convince everyone that we wasn't. And during that break, other people jumped onto the ballroom scene, and it was like, okay, yeah, let's come back and remind them.
Fantastic.
That's the nicest way of putting it. So yeah, and we've been here since. But it really exploded, I'd say, 2014, 2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And today, what's House of West?
Oh, wow. So House of West was created in 2018. We were originally in the House of Khan, and then a large number of us, over 100 of us, decided to leave the House of Khan and become the House of West.
Okay.
No affiliation to Kanye or Kim.
Yeah.
And yes, for the past 2-3 years, we have been slaying in our lane.
And I saw this amazing show that came out on HBO last year.
Legendary?
Absolutely. And there was the House of West on Legendary.
Yes. Yes, House of West were on season 1 of Legendary. Unfortunately, they didn't win.
But
but
they were robbed.
that is the general consensus. But I do know that they are planning on trying to do almost like how RuPaul does All Stars.
Gotcha.
And they're talking about bringing the House of West back.
Wow, that would be amazing.
I don't know if the House of West would go back, but...
Okay. Sounds like there's some more in that story, but we'll park that. We'll unpack that at a later date. So in the UK, I know over the summer you ran a few Vogue dancing West Wednesdays?
Yes.
Yeah.
So West Wednesdays was with an organisation called St. Margaret's, which is trying to basically bring back the theme of molly houses and that community that
What's
used
a
to...
molly house?
So a molly house is somewhere where queer men and women would go to, and they could wear clothes of a different gender.
Yeah.
So there were several molly houses in like Holborn, Covent Garden, Tottenham Court Road, Bethnal Green.
What decade are we talking about?
18th century.
18th century, okay.
So because there are so many similarities between a molly house and a ballroom house.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
That's how I was brought onto the project.
Fantastic. From molly house to ballroom.
Exactly.
Thank you. Don't go away, because after this, we have another guest from House of West on this show. See you soon. Welcome back to Slay Stories. Still with us is international father Darrell West. But let's give a warm welcome to journalist and European godmother Harley West. She has been involved in the ballroom since the late noughties and is regarded as one of the central pioneers of the London scene. She's known as the hand performance girl, and if you missed the Let It Rain ball in London last year, Finally, she's also part of the Drag Realness Girls and is a respected ballroom historian. Harley.
Hey.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And how are you?
I'm doing well. Very happy to be here.
It's our pleasure. So the ballroom scene, what you've done within the House of West and as European godmother is pioneering, to say the least. And as a hand queen, are you gonna show us a little bit of the hand movements before we get into it, or we'll save that for later?
We can save that one. Yeah, we can save it for later.
We'll come to that. So we're talking earlier about the ballroom culture, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of history to it. Is there anything you'd like to add to that European side of our ballroom history?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of history throughout the whole scene. I think what's important to note in ballroom overall is really about who ballroom was designed for and who created it. So we did, Darrell earlier did touch on the 1920s and everything, and the pageant system and the drag queens. Now we fast forward to the 60s, 70s, no, the 60s, late 60s, and there were a lot of, pageants happening in New York City, and that's when the pioneering icon Crystal LaBeija competed, and she said, no more, I'm not having this anymore, because the pageant system was very white focused, and a lot of the girls who were competing, they had to lighten their skin a bit, and they were often disregarded, and other people were chosen. There we go, very much overlooked. So she was like, no more, and decided to throw her
table.
Absolutely, and that's when the house system started coming up, because she was like, well, I'm gonna open the House of LaBeija and I'm gonna throw my own function. And it grew from there. And it was really about centering trans women and femmes of color, mainly Black and Latin. And that's who ballroom really is centered about and is for. I think as
Amazing
as a butch queen, as a gay man, you know, we are allowed to come, but really it is about the girls. And I think it's important for people to know.
Remember it's centered around the girls.
It's about the girls.
That's really good to remember. And also the discrimination that many people that participate within the ballroom scene face in wider society. And finding that safe space within the ballroom is something that I hear come up quite often. Is that something you can comment on? Terrell? Harley?
I mean, yeah, sure. Ballroom was created out of a frustration. It was created to escape the white gaze and to hide from heterosexual people. So, you know, that's really what it is about. And it was just a place to celebrate our bodies and to celebrate who we are as queer and trans, Black and Latin people. So, yeah, that's what that's about.
I remember back in Nigeria, you probably heard of us, the goddesses. We started a house. This was in late 90s, actually, giving away my age, but the late 90s. I was in medical school in Enugu in Nigeria, and at the time, me and my friends, we just wanted a space we could hang, kiki, and chill without fear of being attacked. And we thought, you know, let's throw a ball. Let's throw a gala. We didn't call it ballroom at the time, but we had the pageants, we had the walks, the mimes. We dressed up in the drag, and we had a name, the Goddesses Ball. And it was fun. It was just pure teenage fun. But we had to go into hiding after that because the police and the media thought that we were these, you know, evil people that they wanted
deviants.
Exactly. So I don't know. Now in 2021, are things different? Do you find yourself more accepted in wider society, or is ballroom still kind of niche and on its own?
It's a loaded question.
Yeah, I had to take a deep breath in. I was like, I don't think it's as bad as it was, but there's definitely still an air of racism and danger and people in ballroom being manipulated and judged, and even in the mainstream society, and like even like things like music videos, they'll get people from the ballroom scene that don't know any better, and they'll be like, yeah, I'm gonna have you film a music video. And if you're filming a music video from say 6 a.m. till 1 the next morning, and they're like, oh, but this was just an experiment to see how well it will go, so we're not actually going to pay you.
Oh no.
Yeah. So they just, there's just loads of things like that, and and then I will be sitting in like the creative rooms as well, and they're like, okay, well, we've got 11 white dancers, let's just get one really dark skin to balance it out. So it's just gonna, it's hard.
There's that, and also speaking in regards to Black trans women, the threat and danger to them is very high, and it's very real. I don't have the statistics, but I know last year during the pandemic, a huge number of Black trans women were murdered, and there's hardly any justice there. So, you know, there is a threat that's very imminent, very, very real, and I think it's important for us to have these spaces. So at least, even if just for a moment, there's a feeling of euphoria, a feeling of validation, and, you know,
just
being
the number was like over 300.
Wow.
It was like crazy figures.
That's terrible.
And then that's only the stuff that's reported.
That's reported, indeed.
So, yeah.
On a more uplifting note, one thing that I admire and respect so much about ballroom is the courage, the strength the fashion, the creativity, the energy. There's so much about ballroom that even spills into pop culture. And
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's years ahead of pop culture.
Yeah.
So how does that work from a ballroom to pop culture type narrative?
I mean, when we look back in history, we already know a lot of pop culture is taken from Black culture, specifically Black American culture, African American culture. And I just think that is a testament to the creativity of Black people overall.
Absolutely.
We come from so many different, ethnic groups, societies, tribes or whatever, and it's a very rich and beautiful culture with different cultures, and it's just a lot of people take from that. So what more ballroom?
Indeed. So backgrounds. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about your backgrounds and your personal journeys into ballroom?
Yeah, absolutely.
Darrell has told us earlier, but
Yeah, so
if you'd like to.
Okay, well.
Females first.
Thank you. Well, I found ballroom when I was I was an undergrad. I was at university, and I was just really not satisfied with the scene as it was. It was very much, the club. I'm not a club girl. I don't like going to clubs at all. So I got bored very quickly, and I was like, there has to be more. Surfing YouTube, it was very early. YouTube was a new thing. This was like 2008, new thing. And I saw a music video for Hercules and Love Affair, a wonderful song called You Belong, which is a fantastic, YouTube it is great. And
Okay, we will too.
there were two Black people doing these movements, and I was like, what is this? I was like, straight to the comments. Found out one of them that was dancing was the creative director of the fashion brand Hood by Air, Shane Oliver, I believe is his name.
Okay.
And straight to Hood by Air's website, went to their blog, and I saw that there was voguing there. And
Amazing.
from then, voguing was the conduit that took me into ballroom. So from there, I started watching Paris is Burning.
Started doing the...
Absolutely, all of that. And so, that was really my journey into ballroom, essentially. It was hard at first because there wasn't a lot going on. But then I found Darrell.
Legendary Darrell West.
And then it was like, it was just over from
How did
there.
we find each other?
That's a story for another time.
Okay, hopefully we bring you back to share that story. Because Slave Stories reuniting families since 20-something. Okay, so that's all we have time for in this segment, but please don't go away. Welcome back to Slave Stories. Still with us, legendary father Darrell West and pioneer European godmother Harley. Thank you. Now, during the break, we talked about the upcoming documentary on HBO.
Yeah.
Tell me, how was that for you?
I mean, it was extremely powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm also, I'm excited.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's time. I think it's overdue, to be honest. Because obviously we had Paris is Burning, then we had How Do I Look, but then there was a very quiet period. And then 2011, 2012, more documentaries started coming out, but more documentaries about our people in the underground. I think it's definitely needed. So I'm excited to see this, absolutely.
Yeah, I think as an African, I am both excited and enamored. I'm in love. Just watching that, I'm like, wow, because those are stories that we don't hear often for whatever reason, whether it's because people are too scared to say anything or because generally people don't like talking about Africa at all. So having a group of queer people from Nigeria and knowing what queer people go through in that country, to have them to come out and say, this is who we are, I mean...
And stand in that truth.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's brave, it's powerful. And yeah, I'm excited to watch it. for sure.
Looking forward to it as well.
West screening.
West
Yeah.
screening.
Yes.
Okay. And you know, something about the ballroom communities, obviously we center trans women and ourselves and create these spaces for us. When it comes to the wider communities that try to participate within ballroom culture, do you see any particular trends, or how is that interaction between sort of, say, the cis, hetero, white male or black male that comes into a ballroom space?
Okay. I would like to say really that essentially ballroom is open to anybody who respects what ballroom is about and respects the people that ballroom is centered on.
Yeah.
On a wider scale, people of color, people who are trying to escape the gaze of whiteness and, you know, all of that. But there are a lot of white people who are also involved in ballroom, a lot of which who do understand the history and recognize who ballroom is really for.
Yeah.
And they understand that they are guests.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
They're guests.
Yeah, you're in our house.
Yeah.
Take your shoes off.
Leave your shoes and baggage at the door. Come
that.
through.
Very that. But I think for myself, I would love to see more black people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
It's funny, I haven't managed to take any of my straight black friends to a ball yet that are male. I've taken my straight female friends that are black, 2 balls, and she loved it. She fell in love with ball culture and ballroom, and she respects, you know, the space as an ally.
Yeah, well, there's a long history of black women coming to the balls. Even when you look at some old clips from the 90s in America, there are a few black girls who are walking categories, whether that be body or runway.
Yes.
And things like that. So there's definitely a space there for black women to come and to just be about themselves, you know?
I mean, my mum came to...
That was lovely.
Mama West, okay, coming through.
That was really nice. It's always nice
She
to
walked
see
the runway.
Wow.
Period. She must.
Yeah.
Of course.
The mother of a pioneer, hello.
So with ballroom categories, you're going to talk about realness.
Yes.
Tell me, what is realness?
So realness is I'm going to say the art of, but it is about how one blends into society. So how you can get away with looking a certain way even though you might not be.
Gotcha.
So under realness, you have just realness, which is like every day, no one's gonna clock your tea. So whether you are a trans woman or if you're a gay boy or whatever, no one can clock your tea and be like, oh, that's a trans person.
You should be able to pass.
Yes, it's about passing. And that
But do we want to pass, or we want to like...
Well, I mean, there is a lot of conversations happening now around realness and whether it still has a place in ballroom. I think it does, just because
The legacy? And okay.
Absolutely, and there are people who can walk that easy. But now when we're dealing with different gender expressions, it then becomes tricky.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of us have been having some good conversations, and it's becoming a lot more, you know, open and whatnot. But realness is definitely up there. I mean, I'm a realness girl. I walk drag realness.
Amazing.
So,
And and the final question, ballroom categories. There's a whole politic around. So can we close up ballroom categories? The floor is open. Tell me.
Oh gosh, there are so many. There's something there for everybody, and they all come under different umbrellas.
Yes.
So you have the performance categories, and that's where you'll find voguing, and that's split into Vogue Femme, Old Way, which is the original way, and New Way, which is like Old Way but involves contortions and everything. And then that even Vogue Femme is split into different categories.
Vogue to anything.
And
Which is all different types of music, which is great because you get to really see people's musicality, I feel.
yeah.
And then you have like the fashion categories, so
The fashion.
best dressed,
Yes.
labels.
The labels. Then you already mentioned the face.
Yes.
Runway. Yeah, so
Runway.
that would be beauty
The
and body. So when body is
The
body.
body category.
Yes, and that's split into.
I need a fan.
Well, see, body is really a celebration of different body types. So
Yes,
you
I
have
love
luscious
it.
body, model's body, muscular body, and then on top of that you have sex siren, and that's when it really gets
Steamy.
yes.
Thank you for that education on ballroom. And that's all I'm afraid we have time for in this episode of Slay Stories. Thanks to Darrell West and Harley West for being our amazing guests on Ballroom.